Boy, is it impossible to actually know what the hell's going on in this country or anywhere else. Because you got this story from Fox News right here. Texas says it found 95,000 non-citizens on voter rolls. 58,000 have voted. Interesting headline. It's actually repeated a few days ago by NBC5 in Dallas-Fort Worth. 58,000 non-U.S. citizens voted in Texas state elections, Attorney General Paxton says. I retweeted this. But hold on. We then get this. Trump returns to rampant voter fraud theme following Texas investigation, where they say that of the group, in fact, Texas Tribune reported the Texas Secretary of State's office announced Friday it had flagged 95,000 registered voters who it said should be reviewed to determine whether they are U.S. citizens. Of that group, 58,000 cast a ballot in at least one election from 1996 to 2018, they reported. This is what Texas Tribune tweeted. You might be seeing headlines of tweets tonight that claim Texas says 58,000 non-citizens have voted in Texas. That is not true. That is not what the state has said. So who do I trust? Fox News, NBC, or the Texas Tribune? I have no fucking idea. What am I supposed to do? What is the average person supposed to do when you see... So look, I'll say this. I see the headline published 19 hours ago from Fox News and I go, okay, it's Fox News, right? Then I go over to NBC5 and I say, okay, NBC5, local affiliates, they're typically pretty good. And then you have The Hill countering this claim, citing the Texas Tribune. The reality is, it's mostly true. It is. Why then would the Texas Tribune put out a tweet saying it's not true? That is extremely, extremely irresponsible. Extremely. Well, let's start by seeing what Fox News had to say, because they have the latest version of the story. It's the 27th. Those stories came out 2 days ago. Let's see if Fox News dug into this to figure out what actually happened. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton announced Friday that the state has discovered 95,000 non-citizens on the voter rolls going back to 1996, 58,000 of whom who have voted in at least one Texas election, an announcement likely to raise fresh concerns about the prospect of voter fraud. So then we go down to Greg Abbott, because they're going to, we don't need his context from the New York Times or whatever. So we see this from Ken Paxton. Voter fraud alert. The Texas Secretary of State discovered approximately 95,000 individuals identified by DPS as non-U.S. citizens have a matching voter registration record in Texas, approximately 58,000 who have voted. Well, that seems like a pretty straightforward statement from Ken Paxton, who I believe is the Attorney General for Texas. And they, mention this. I support prosecution where appropriate. The state will work on legislation to safeguard against these illegal practices, Abbott tweeted. Okay, I'm pretty sure Ken Paxton is literally the Attorney General. So I don't know. Yes. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, follow Tex AG for official news from his office. Well, what if he says it and he's the source? You can see I retweeted this. Then how could there be any contradiction if the source himself is claiming it's true? So, Trump tweets about this. They say Dallas State Rep. Rafael Anchia told Associated Press that because we have consistently seen Texas politicians conjure the specter of voter fraud as pretext to suppress legitimate votes, we're naturally skeptical. And I think it's fair to be naturally skeptical, just because the Attorney General says it doesn't make it true, but he is the source, so I would lean towards more of that credibility. Paxton's office noted that there have been a number of convictions of voter fraud in the state in recent years, including a charge against a non-citizen this month in illegal voting in Navarro County. Now, what did the Texas Tribune say, and why are they claiming this is not true, when in fact, their story actually says it's kind of true? It's really weird they would do that, wouldn't it? From the Texas Tribune. Texas officials flagged tens of thousands of voters for citizenship checks. The list compiled by the Texas Secretary of State contains 95,000 names. It's unclear exactly how many of those individuals are not actually U.S. citizens and whether that number will be available in the future. So here's what they say. Secretary of State's office in Texas announced Friday it would send local election officials a list of 95,000 registered voters who the state says counties should consider checking to see whether they are U.S. citizens and therefore legally eligible to vote. In an advisory released Friday afternoon, the office said it was flagging individuals who had provided the Texas Department of Public Safety with some form of documentation, including a work visa or green card, that showed they were not a citizen when they were obtaining a driver's license or an ID card. Among the individuals flagged, about 58,000 individuals cast a ballot in one or more elections from 1996 to 2018, the Secretary of State's office said. It's unclear exactly how many of those individuals are not actually U.S. citizens and whether that number will be available in the future. In its notice to counties, the Secretary of State's office said the names should be considered weak matches using all capital letters for emphasis. That means counties may now choose to investigate the eligibility of the individuals who were flagged, which would require them to send a notice asking for proof of citizenship within 30 days or take no action. By law, the counties aren't allowed to automatically revoke a voter's registration without sending out such a notice. So, let's break it down. A notice was sent that these 95,000 people, when they were getting their driver's license, showed something that said they weren't citizens. Many of these people were registered to vote. Therefore, it is likely that many of them were illegally or wrongfully registered to vote because they presented proof that they weren't citizens. Thus, 58,000 of these individuals have cast a ballot in one or more elections since 1996. Many of them are likely not to actually be citizens. We don't know how many actually are, but I think it's unfair to just blanketly say this is not true, and it would be more important to tweet out this is not, like, I wouldn't say it's not true, I would say this is mostly false or mostly true, and it's really just an opinion. The reality is, it is very likely that from this group we have seen illegal votes. Plain and simple. You can't have 95,000 people getting a driver's license who show a green card, which means you're not a citizen, and then I believe what happens is they're automatically registered. I don't know if they are automatically registered, but somehow they get registered. And then of that group, we can see that they voted, right? So it's somewhat true. Now, it does become a problem when you see the narrative pushed far and wide that it's definitively 58,000. But then I'll say this. There's an advisory published by the Secretary of State in Texas. Who do I trust? Do I trust the Texas Attorney General, who said straight up that the Secretary of State identified this? Is the Attorney General wrong? Maybe? I don't know. So here's what's going to happen. Conservatives are going to read NBC, Fox News. Admittedly, there's way more sources saying it's true than there aren't. And they're going to say it's true. And the left is going to read the Texas Tribune and say, no, it's not true. It's fake. Or they're going to read The Hill and say Trump's lying again. In reality, it's just nuanced. And it's more true. I would say it's mostly true because it's not like they said we have 1 million voters, and of these 1 million voters, some of them might not be citizens. No, they said we have 95,000 registered voters who are likely not to be citizens because they provided some kind of documentation that said they weren't. Plain and simple. So they say this. It's possible that individuals flagged by the state who provided DPS with documentation that indicated they were authorized to be in the country could have become naturalized citizens since they obtained their driver's license or ID card. A spokesperson for the Secretary of State said officials are very confident that the data received from DPS is current. Mostly true. Plain and simple. If the Secretary of State is going to say this data is mostly current, then it would stand to reason. It is very likely the majority, the overwhelming majority, are not citizens and voted illegally. They go on to say, in announcing the review of the rolls, Secretary of State David Whitley, who was appointed to the post last month after serving as Deputy Chief of Staff to Republican Governor Greg Abbott, immediately handed the data over to Texas AG Ken Paxton, a Republican, who said his office will spare no effort in assisting with these troubling cases. So you'll definitely see the left saying there's a conflict of interest. Obviously, the Republican wants to push that narrative. Maybe, maybe not. I can't say whether it's true. If the data exists, it does. But of course, the right will present it in the way that benefits them. The left will present it in the way that benefits them. Because we're literally now seeing the left say it's all fake news and the right saying it's definitively true. But in reality, it looks like the evidence suggests it's mostly true, right? It's not all 58,000. So it would be unfair to say legitimately 58,000 votes. But it would be fair to say we assume most of the 58,000, based on the data, did cast illegal votes. So it's mostly true. People get naturalized, Davis said. It's entirely too early to say that. The numbers were released just a few weeks into legislative session, during which lawmakers may take up proposals to require some form of citizenship verification before registering to vote. The U.S. Supreme Court in 2013 rejected states' efforts to require proof of citizenship to register to vote. Other federal courts have knocked down more recent efforts. Integrity and efficiency of elections in Texas require accuracy of our state's voter rolls. My office is committed to using all available tools under the law to maintain an accurate list of registered voters, Whitley said in a statement. But Beth Stevens, voting rights legal director of the Texas Civil Rights Project, said the announcement echoed efforts around the country to remove eligible voters from the rolls. The secretary's actions threatened to result in tens of thousands of eligible voters being removed from the rolls, including those with the least resources to comply with the demand to show papers, Stevens said. In a state where about 15.8 million Texans are registered to vote, the AG's office has recently pursued a small number of convictions of illegal voting by non-citizens. Past reviews of voter rolls by other states ultimately found that only a small number of the thousands of non-citizens they initially flagged had actually voted. For years, Researchers have found that voter fraud is rare, and claims that non-citizens are voting in large numbers have not been substantiated. But I will say this. We know it happens. We know this may be another instance of it. So, in my opinion, I kind of lead towards securing our elections. They're the foundation of democracy. And if we have some evidence that it has happened, then shouldn't we secure it, right? It's very strange to me, the kind of battles that people get into in politics, because who doesn't have an ID? Like, it's the weirdest thing. You need an ID to go to the movies. Like, I literally can't go buy beer without an ID. But you can vote? The foundation of democracy? It's always been the weirdest thing to me. I never understood why Democrats oppose it, unless you want to get conspiratorial and where they claim that Democrats are using illegal votes to win. I don't believe that to be the case, but I do think they will see a benefit from allowing non-citizens to vote, because we're seeing tons of Democrats actually push for local ordinances to allow non-citizens to vote. It happened in San Francisco. They're allowing non-citizens, okay, illegal immigrants, to vote in school elections if they have a student there. And this, in my opinion, is shocking. Because if anyone can vote, what's the point of a country? What's the point of law? What's the point of Social Security? How can you provide health care? Listen, I think it would be great if we could provide health care to all citizens. Like, straight up. Maybe we can reallocate tax funds from the bloated military budget that we're wasting, dumping money into the Middle East, and put it towards health care and education. Let me ask you that. Would you disagree with that, right? Let's say no new taxes, but we just say, how about we end the foreign wars and use that money to pay for school and healthcare? I don't know if it would cover all of it, but maybe we could do something. Maybe we could, right? Would that be a better use of the money? In my opinion, it would, but you may disagree. The point is, if you want to provide free education, smaller class sizes like the teachers in LA are demanding, but you're going to allow anyone to come to the country and vote, like in these, I'm talking about specific cities, not this instance of, I'm talking about these cities that are saying, yes, allow non-citizens to vote. Okay, if anyone can come here, if there's open borders, if anyone can vote, then who's paying for the health care? Who's going to get it? It's insane. The resources are finite. You know what? Anyway, stick around. I'm going to talk about media, and I'm pissed. So that'll be at 4 p.m. on my main channel, youtube.com/Timcast, and I will see you then.